9 universities just got an offer they can't refuse, except they absolutely must. By the end, you'll see why taking this deal could cost you way more than tuition. The Trump administration is trying to buy something universities can't sell: their independence. Here's what's happening. After slashing federal funding to higher education earlier this year, the administration is now dangling money and White House invitations in front of 9 universities. The catch? They have to sign a compact with the government. Think of it like a credit card that promises backstage concert access. Except, instead of concert tickets, you're trading away academic freedom. And I need you to understand why this matters to you specifically. Because this isn't just about ivory tower politics. This is about whether the degree you earn, or your kid earns, will mean anything. It's about whether research that leads to medical breakthroughs can happen without political interference. It's about whether a president can demand loyalty oaths from institutions that are supposed to answer to truth, not power. Hold that thought about loyalty oaths. We'll come back to that. First, let me tell you what's actually in this compact, because some of it sounds reasonable at first glance. The document talks about addressing rising tuition costs. Who's against that? It caps foreign students at 15% of enrollment and requires them to take American civics courses about how great our country is. On the surface, maybe you think, okay, tuition relief sounds good. But here's what the compact really does. It reads like a criminal indictment against universities, accusing them of being single-mindedly focused on discriminating against white males. One section says universities must adopt policies prohibiting incitement to violence, as if campuses are currently encouraging terrorist agitators to run wild. Another demands institutions transform or abolish units that purposefully punish, belittle, and even spark violence against conservative ideas. Read that again. Violence against ideas, not violence against people, violence against ideas. As if progressive students are currently forming vigilante squads to beat up anyone who holds the wrong view on abortion. Now here's the irony I promised you earlier. May Mailman, one of the strategists behind this assault on higher education, told the New York Times that universities have committed to a culture of victimhood. She said that, a saint, strategist for an administration that has built an entire grievance industrial complex around supposed real Americans held down by liberal elites. The administration talks constantly about fostering open debate, but what they're actually creating are safe spaces for the fragile egos of MAGA students who claim universities have a culture of negativity toward conservatives. So what does this mean for your wallet, your kids' education, or the research that might one day save your life? Let me translate the most dangerous part of this compact into plain English. The document demands that universities ensure a broad spectrum of viewpoints within every field, department, school, and teaching unit. Faculty, students, and staff at all levels would first be tested for ideology. Once these empirical assessments are complete, the administration would engineer the appropriate diversity of viewpoints. Think about what that means in practice. Some bureaucracy, answerable to the White House, would monitor the political views of every professor, every department, every teaching assistant. They'd create quotas. They'd track whether departments maintain consistent viewpoints over time. What happens if your new conservative colleague starts holding different views? Does the bureaucracy intervene again? In theory, this wouldn't just be affirmative action for conservatives. It would force economics departments to hire Marxists to meet diversity quotas. And here's the question no one in the administration has answered. Who decides what counts as viewpoint diversity? Who monitors it? Who enforces it? Remember that loyalty oath I mentioned at the beginning? Here's where that comes in. Some Trumpists themselves admit the government shouldn't micromanage the distribution of political attitudes on campus. But their rejection isn't principled. According to the article, they're simply afraid of setting a precedent, afraid that one day Democrats might use the same power to flood universities with leftists. They openly call it policing, so they know what this is. They're just worried about who might use the weapon later. Let me give you the receipts on why this matters beyond campus. The Republican Party is simultaneously capping federal student loan programs and directing money to high-cost private lenders. So while they offer this compact as tuition relief, they're making it harder for you to afford college through traditional federal aid. The compact's criteria are deliberately vague, which means universities that sign it will probably overdo compliance out of fear. And there's no protection once you're in. This functions like a mafia state. Universities bend the knee, sign the compact, and then the government can come back anytime and accuse them of violating the agreement. Still too many courses in victimhood studies. Still too much violence toward conservative ideas, as defined by bureaucrats. The government will encourage donors to demand their money back. Universities that take this deal will live under constant threat. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Maybe universities deserve some accountability. Maybe there is too much political conformity on campus. Maybe conservatives do face hostility sometimes. Let me steelman that argument. It's true that universities aren't perfect. It's true that some departments lean heavily in one ideological direction. It's true that conservative students sometimes feel outnumbered. But here's the rebuttal. The solution to viewpoint imbalance isn't government surveillance and quota systems. Academic freedom means protecting research and teaching from political interference from any direction. The moment you let a presidential administration test faculty for ideology and engineer departmental politics, you've destroyed the independence that makes universities valuable in the first place. And practically speaking, this compact exceeds the president's constitutional powers to begin with. Let me tell you what happens next, because the timeline here matters. The 9 universities receiving this offer have a choice. They can sign and accept the money, White House invitations, and government monitoring, or they can reject it publicly. According to the article, if they simply reject it quietly, they'll be charged with wanting to protect their tuition racket, helping foreigners, and importing radicalism to undermine American greatness. So, rejection has to be loud. It has to explain exactly what's wrong with this compact. What should you watch for? First, watch whether any of the 9 universities sign. If even one does, it becomes a proof of concept for the administration, evidence that they can get away with demanding loyalty oaths. Second, watch for court challenges. The administration has been losing cases over free speech and visas for foreign students. That's precisely why they're trying this compact approach, to trap universities in a deal that removes federal law protections and gives the White House arbitrary power. Third, watch what happens to universities that refuse. Do they face retaliation? Do they lose other funding? Does the administration publicly attack them? Here's my prediction, and I'm labeling this as speculation based on patterns we've seen. More likely than not, at least 1 or 2 universities will sign. They'll calculate that the immediate funding is worth the risk. They'll convince themselves they can manage the compliance requirements. They'll be wrong. Once they sign, the administration will use vague violations to extract more concessions. Other universities will face pressure from donors, from boards, from students' families to sign too. Within 2 years, we'll see a bureaucracy emerge to monitor campus viewpoint diversity, complete reporting requirements and assessment cycles. Less likely but possible. All 9 reject it. The administration retaliates, and we see a major court battle over the limits of executive power in higher education. And here's the scenario almost no one is preparing for. Universities that comply will start to overdo it so dramatically that the quality of education actually declines. Self-censorship, hiring based on political profiles rather than expertise, research topics chosen for safety rather than importance. That's when your degree loses value. Now let me tie this back to democratic values, not through slogans, but through tangible effects. Democrats believe in competent government that serves people, not in loyalty tests that serve power. We believe in the dignity of work, including the work of teaching and research, which requires freedom from political interference. We believe in pluralism, the idea that diverse perspectives make us stronger, but that diversity can't be engineered by bureaucrats with ideological quotas. The compact claims it will achieve academic excellence in higher education. But excellence requires trust. It requires cooperation without overregulation. It requires professors focusing on research and teaching rather than constantly looking over their shoulders at political monitors. Universities are fragile institutions. Many American ones are excellent precisely because people trust each other. What the administration is consciously trying to do is create divisions, setting potential collaborators against resistors. Even if universities escape the worst outcomes, the damage from this pressure will be real and lasting. So what can you do? You can track which universities sign and which refuse. You can ask trustees and presidents at universities in your state to explain their position publicly. You can watch for reporting on compliance requirements if any schools sign. What exactly are they promising to monitor? If you're a student or a parent, you can ask admissions offices. Will this school sign? What are the implications for academic freedom? If you're a donor, you can make your expectations clear. And you can notice when politicians talk about higher education reform. Ask them, do they support government monitoring of faculty political views? Do they think bureaucrats should engineer viewpoint diversity? Where exactly is the line between accountability and authoritarian control? Here's the payoff I promised you at the beginning. 9 universities got an offer they seemingly can't refuse. Money after brutal funding cuts, access to the White House, preferential treatment. But the real cost isn't in the contract's text. It's in what happens after you sign. Constant monitoring, vague violations, arbitrary enforcement, and the slow destruction of the independence that makes universities valuable. Carrots are bait. They lead universities into an alley where, rather than waiting with a stick, the government puts a gun to their heads. That's not a funding opportunity, it's a trap. So here's my question for you. If you were a university president facing this choice, immediate money and pressure from boards versus long-term independence and potential retaliation, which would you choose and why? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to know where you draw the line. And if this breakdown helped you see through the spin to the stakes, subscribe for more clear, fact-first analysis that connects the news to your life.